Hi, welcome. Let's get started. Next slide. Good afternoon. I'm Kathy Leibowitz, and my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I serve as the current chair of the Research Administration Advisory Council Communications Subcommittee. It's a mouthful. On behalf of the subcommittee, welcome to the October 2021 RAND meeting. I am a white, cisgendered woman with shoulder-length light brown hair, bluish glasses, wearing a dark wine sweater set. I'm joining you from my office at the Institute for Social Research. Next slide. Just a few notes as we get started. We are recording the meeting. Participant video and mics are muted. Chat is disabled. Live captioning is on. Please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen to submit questions. We also acknowledge that U of M is located on the territory of the Anishinaabe people. In 1817, the Ojibwe, Ottawa, Potawatomi nations made the largest single transfer of land to the University of Michigan, ceded through the Treaty of Fort Meigs so that their children could be educated. We recognize the history of displacement of Native communities that facilitated the founding of the University of Michigan. We acknowledge the sovereignty of tribal lands, and we reaffirm contemporary and ancestral Anishinaabeg ties to this land, as well as profound contributions of Native Americans to this institution. Next slide. We have a full agenda, and we will do our best to communicate, connect, and importantly, stay on time. We have presentations featuring the Michigan Research Computing Package, the RA Forum on Slack, the new award change request process, as well as updates from our central offices. At 3:30, we will transition to the OVPR Staff Recognition Awards. I hope you'll stay to celebrate with us. Next. We extend community kudos to the 2021 OVPR Staff Recognition Awardees, April Pepperdine, Becky O'Brien, David Paris, and Caleb Smith. To the NCURA 2021 Distinguished Educator Awardee, Heather Offhouse, and to the NCURA Region 4 2021 Meritorious Contribution Awardees, Sue Kelch and Danielle Smith for the Aim Higher CRA study program. Well-deserved one and all. And now, I am delighted to introduce today's MCs and our colleagues who chaired the RAC Metrics, Process, and Training Subcommittees, Jennifer Huntington, Melissa Carby, and Patrick Lagua. Together, the four of us have nearly 75 years of experience in research administration. Jennifer Huntington, chair of the Metrics Subcommittee, has 15 years at the U with 10 in research administration. She oversees the research portfolio of the Ross Business School. Jennifer has chaired RAC Metrics since fall 2020, and she is a member of the RAC DEI work group. Jennifer has two cats, Buttercup on the left and Rue on the right. They like it best when they can keep a close eye on her work. Melissa Carby, chair of the Process Subcommittee, has 20 years in research administration at the U. Melissa is currently with OVPR, providing cradle to grave RA support to our OVPR units. She's a past president of the Michigan SRAI chapter, and she is currently using her RA skills to manage a full kitchen remodel. She is also an avid backyard birder, and her cat, Lorelei, both enjoys and despises this hobby. Next. Patrick Lagua, chair of the Training Subcommittee, began his RA journey way back in 2009. His journey included stops in ORSP, social work, engineering, and now dentistry, where he has spent the last 7 years. Patrick is a lifelong comic book enthusiast and enjoys spoiling his two cat children, Annabelle and Caesar, who clearly enjoy, and I dare say encourage, the spoiling. Patrick also hopes to soon get back to his other passions, traveling and live music. And now, over to you, Pat.
Thanks, Kathy. I'm here to briefly talk about the RAC Training Subcommittee. Next slide, please. So the RAC Training Subcommittee focuses on identifying training gaps. The training may also involve graphs. Recommend new training and also work on developing new training using a variety of training delivery modes, such as webinars, live in-person courses before our hybrid work model, which is something we hope to get back to at some point, and other modes of delivery. Some of our flagship programs have included the Navigate Fundamentals course, and of course, our big catalog of webinars, which are available to peruse at your leisure. This is just the current roster of our training subcommittee. And some of our notable accomplishments include, as I mentioned, the comprehensive suite of training opportunities through the Navigate program. We also created the Ramp Up mentoring program, and we've just recently conducted a review of that program to identify some improvements and enhancements. And we've quickly pivoted to offer some virtual training options during the pandemic. And this is also something we're exploring and we'll be doing more of in the near future. I am here to introduce Brock Palin, who is the director of the Advanced Research Computing in Information and Technology Service, ITS. ARC is the university-wide dedicated research IT service provider that focuses on services at scale and compliance needs. ARC is best known for its high-performance computing, research storage, and archive and secure enclaves. So today, Brock will be talking about the newly offered Michigan Research Computing Package, which I think y'all will be very excited about because it offers a lot of new resources for investigators with data storage needs. And the best part is I believe most of it is free and available to most investigators. So Brock, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Noted, I'm Brock Palin. I'm the director here at Advanced Research Computing under the Office of the CIO at the University of Michigan. We're going to talk about the Research Computing Package as mentioned. The Research Computing Package is a significant departure from the business model traditionally used by the university for high-performance computing and research data storage that can't be met by traditional desktop scale services like Dropbox, Google Drive, and offerings like that. So most of your researchers probably won't actually have a need for this sort of environment, but those who need it really do need it. This is when your stuff gets too big for your laptop. It's a simple, dependable access to several ITS services, including high-performance computing clusters and data storage. I'm not going to be touching on the secure enclaves here, but the secure enclaves do exist, and they are currently also no cost. These secure enclaves comply with NIST 800-171, also known as Controlled Unclassified Information. There's also a HIPAA flavor, which is less restrictive than the CUI flavor, and thus can handle generally some of the most restrictive data types we have, like data from CMS. We have a lot of data from different like insurance providers. We have a lot of highly sensitive human subject data and stuff like that in those environments, and generally makes the compliance process much easier if you reside inside the enclave. But the RCP, the first thing is high performance computing. So the way this works is each individual, qualifying individual, can get 80,000 CPU hours, and they can consume and delegate out use of these resources as they want. So we have two primary clusters, one called Great Lakes, which is our traditional open science, very flexible, user-friendly environment for large-scale compute. But we have another one called ARMIS-2, which has PHI approval and can handle other types of sensitive data types. So if you have somebody who needs more memory or GPUs because they're getting into machine learning, or just an environment to be able to work with data with Jupyter notebooks, whether they're doing interactive computing, SAS data, or really in-depth parallel programming at scale, like you see in the news about like the exascale projects. Those are the two environments that exist. And faculty can choose where they want their credit to go. So they can get 80,000 hours. Now, what does 80,000 CPU hours mean? It means they can use 4,000 processors for 20 hours. They can use a small number spread out over a long period of time. So this environment really allows faculty and researchers to be able to take a large quantity of work, get in, get the results, and be able to move on. So they're not waiting for like a single computer to run one input after the other. They can come in and use ours and run many at a time. And all we care about is tracking how many CPUs did you use for how long. So you can use fewer for longer or more for shorter, and it's all equal value. I already noted how we have the sensitive data environment in GPUs. We also have in all of those environments machines with very large memory footprints. So if you have a researcher that's looking to buy a specialty workstation and it's very expensive because it has a very large memory footprint for working with larger data volumes, a lot of times if they don't need that on a sustained basis, they can actually use our environment and use our large memory systems. For example, the laptop I'm sitting in front of here has 16 gigabytes of memory. Doesn't matter what you can do with 16 gigabytes, just know that we have some systems that have 100 times that. So you can work with significantly larger data volumes. And sometimes researchers only need that for a short period of time, and it makes more sense to use the RCP, use some of these free hours that you get to use that large memory system only when you need it, and then do your work how you normally do. And we have consultants and research specialty application specialists who can help people navigate these different services. So that's the traditional supercomputers. You can come in, get a lot of computation, a lot of data analysis, a lot of machine learning done very quickly, and now you can do it for no cost. In terms of storage, obviously all this research produces data. And again, this is primarily for people who something like Dropbox and Google Drive doesn't work for them. A common issue that has come up over time, especially in the regulated data space, is that the most cost-effective way to get storage was to buy like an external hard drive. They buy a disk storage device and they keep it in their office. Well, that's very hard to secure. It's very hard to make sure that the data on there are still accessible as part of your data management plans and other needs like that for different funding activities. And also when the data is at the very edge of the network, it's slow to access. It's difficult to share the data with others. So as part of this offering, we also make available 10 terabytes of high performance storage. This is storage that it's encrypted at rest. It's in 2 geographic locations. It has PHI approval, and you can access it from anywhere in the world using our Globus data sharing infrastructure. So you can like share select data with collaborators at other institutions or make boxes where they can drop data to you without you having to have your computer on. You can mount it from machines in your office, and you can use it on our supercomputers or secure enclaves, and this storage goes everywhere. And it's plenty fast. To give you an idea, this storage system can actually overrun the current campus backbone. So the network is going to be the limitation to performance of this storage. But then there's researchers who just generate very large volumes of data. Think of geneticists or people with modern imaging or people doing modern video analysis, right? You're trying to watch like human behavior or something like that, and you're collecting video and, maybe using computer vision to kind of track, how people are moving or something like that. There's all sorts of different types of research that happens that generate large volumes of data. And this data becomes unwieldy. Well, there's a trade-off there. You can have fast, easy to use, but expensive storage, or you can have low cost per unit volume, but lower performance. And so we have these 2 tiers. We also provide each researcher 100 terabytes of archive storage. So that data, if it can't go into, because we do encourage that data be deposited into institutional or domain specific archives like ICPSR, GeneBank, or Deep Blue data. But if you have something that falls outside of that, or you just have very large data volumes you need to hold on to, but you don't need access to it quickly, we'll give each researcher 100 terabytes. So in total, they're getting 110 terabytes of total storage completely at no cost. And so things like storing data after an award, right? So you have kind of like this active research period where you're generating data. But then a lot of times you need to maintain that data either through a data management plan requirement or just through the discipline's norm of, data builds upon itself. Well, when that sponsored award ends, you don't have funding to pay for storage. Well, this is storage you can depend on to be able to use that. And again, our data shows that well over 90% of the researchers on campus store less than 110 terabytes of data. But for those who need more, these environments go into the tens of thousands of terabytes in terms of what they can be expanded, and it can be grown with the addition of additional funding. But again, most researchers, our data shows this will cover 100% of their needs. And again, the storage services, while they work with the clusters and they're designed to work there to give good performance and access to data so the computers aren't bottlenecking on accessing data, we've had a number of researchers sign up to use this storage, and they're not using the supercomputers at all. We have a number of people in music theater and dance and others who are collecting, high resolution video of these different sources of where they're, videotaping either events or historical, events or other sorts of interesting information, and they need a place to keep all that video data. They're keeping it in this environment now. So, stressing again, most researchers who use our environment today, our data shows that this is more than enough to meet their needs. And thus they will go from having to pay for the service as a direct cost to getting it completely free through the CIO and the provost. So how did this reduction in cost for data storage work? Well, this is just, an example. So in the past we had, rates that were approaching full cost recovery, and you had to pay for the very first, there was nothing free. So on the left-hand side, if you needed to store 11 terabytes of data at our old rate of $224 per terabyte per year, it would cost $2,500 a year. And not only that, that cost would be ongoing every year. So if you had to retain the data in the post-award period, where you'd be looking for discretionary funds or other sorts of unit support to be able to keep these costs going. Now you have that 10 terabytes completely free, and ongoing capacity is lower cost. So now 11 terabytes costs you only $134 because you get 10 free, and the additional 1 terabyte is significantly cheaper than it was in the past, while maintaining all of the performance, all of the compliance, and all of the user support that the service had before. Overall, across all of our services, the rates have dropped. And again, this is only for those who need more than the free package gives them. And that package is renewed every year. So the 80,000 CPU hours, that kind of works like a gift card. Every fiscal year, every July, for that faculty member, it gets reloaded and they've got 80,000 hours to use again. It's not a one and done. Same thing with the storage. The 10 terabytes is forever, and the 100 terabytes is forever. But if you need more, we've also lowered all of our rates. You can see here, our rates lowered by around 40% across almost everything. A lot of these services to be aware of when working with a faculty member and they're trying to cost out if they need to buy compute services and they're comparing costs, we can actually be a service of that, and we'll have our contact information here in a moment. But something about these costs here are, for the compute side, you only pay for what you actually use. So unlike when you buy a computer, so say your researcher you're supporting buys a computer for $10,000, puts it in their office, and only uses it once a month for an hour, that's a very expensive way, because Dell, Hewlett Packard, they don't give you back money for unused capacity of the computer. No, you bought it, and if you don't use it. Our environment, when I say here that it costs $145 for 1 year of CPU time, that means you actually used one processor and it was running computations for an entire year. If it only ran for 1 day a month, you're paying a fraction of this. In fact, we actually bill by the minute. So it's very similar to the old phone system, right? You only pay by the minute. So, a lot of times we get in a situation with faculty and they're like, well, I can buy a computer for this and you guys cost this, but it's okay, but what percentage are you using that computer? Because you need to use it 70, 80%, morning, noon, and night, 24/7 to be able to actually have the cost work out. And this comes obviously with networking support, a scientific software library, including titles like MATLAB, SAS, Stata, several versions of R, an entire support team, and a machine learning specialist all sitting behind this. What does it mean for you? So hopefully budget planning has been simplified, since most researchers don't have more than 110 terabytes of data. And if they have supercomputer needs, they don't need a huge quantity of it. Signing up for this package, you no longer need to budget for this as part of your research proposals, unless you're one of those big users. But now we're talking about, you know, the 20%ers, the people who have significant needs in this space. People who want to get started, they want to maybe explore machine learning in an area hasn't been used before. They don't need to use discretionary dollars for it. They can just sign up, get the account, get on the system, poke around, join our Coder Spaces workshop to be able to get some one-on-one help from a scientific expert, and be able to figure out if this really can help speed up their work, protect their work from data loss, explore new ways to be able to submit proposals and be more competitive. How do you get started? Go to this website, arc.umich.edu/umrcp. There'll be a link there and a short video explaining what the package is. And it should take the researcher no more than 5 minutes to fill it out. If they have any questions, they can contact us. And it's also possible if a researcher starts with just, say, the high-speed storage and they're using their workstation, but, you know, 6 months from now, they want to explore machine learning and they want to add the supercomputer time, we can add that. They still qualify for it. They just let us know and we add them on, and they can delegate access to any of their students to be able to use it. So the faculty member still is kind of like in charge of everything, and all the data remains their kind of providence of responsibility, but they're able to, you know, add their graduate students, add any members of their lab who are doing work, your op students or anybody, to be able to consume this, so they can delegate it out. Who was eligible? All campuses, Ann Arbor, Dearborn, Flint, and Michigan Medicine. So pretty much all the campuses are covered. Anybody can sign up for this. Faculty and staff. So any professor or lecturer with an active appointment, they're in. We also are supporting these projects. We have emeritus faculty who still do research projects and bring funding into the institution. We support them also. Yes. Also, when you have a research scientist or a postdoc, they tend to fall into two different worlds. Either they're a member of an organized research group, or they've actually received their own funding. If they have their own funding and they're truly leading their own research, we will support them the same way too. So everybody should have access to at least one of these things, either through their lab supervisor, you know, the professor leading the research activity, or on their own. So PhD students, some disciplines have students where their relationship to their faculty members is a little bit different. So PhD students can also be eligible for this. For most physical and life sciences, they need to sign up under their advisor, but in some disciplines where that advisor relationship is different, would do that too. And we have language around that, and we work with the department to figure out what's the relationship of the PhD student to their advisor and their expectation of resources. There's no services for undergraduate students and masters, basically traditional courses, but there are a program. So if somebody's teaching a class that have those, we give them cycles for the duration of that semester, but that's kind of in the teaching realm as opposed to the research realm. So yeah, contact information. Any questions people may have, send it to arc-support@umich.edu. It's just like for help, but it short circuits it directly to our scientific support team. And any questions or anything? Oh, actually, let's see, there are 4 questions. The managing of accounts and short codes and chart fields will be addressed. I've been finding aspects. Okay. So yeah, so RCP, you don't need a short code to be able to open up an RCP. And like I said, it works like a gift card. You just use it. I would need to talk to you about what your needs are for short code management in terms of these services. We are working on a series of improvements to our portal, which would present more information so you can be able to check to see, hey, you know, these are the short codes that are paying for this service currently, because it is set up where you can divide costs across multiple short codes. So, you know, a project may have, you know, cost share as well as the sponsored activity. You can actually say, I want to split this 60-40, or I can have separate accounts. So I can have a researcher working on, say, an NSF project over here funded by short code A, and an NIH project over here funded by short code B, and they can actually steer their work to bill against those two. And you can specify spending limits. The 80,000 CPU a year or one time, it is every year. So a faculty member may use it up within the first couple of weeks. In fact, this launched in September. We have our first couple of faculty members that have used 100% of their 80,000 hours in less than 2 months. But we have other researchers that they've only used, 3% of it thus far. So every researcher's needs and demands. It's kind of like printing, right? You get 40 pages free. But if you need more than that, you can pay a penny per page, right? That's basically works the exact same way. The way it's set up though, kind of going to the short code question, it won't let you spend money you haven't told the system to do. So if you've used up to 80,000 hours, it stops your students from doing more work until you tell us, hey, I want more work, $100 a month on this short code. And then everything will resume at that point, but it will stop. There's very robust budgeting systems in place. They're maybe not so well documented. So if you have questions about that, please reach out to us. Who is covering the cost of the free storage? Is it available to research teams as well as faculty? I would need to know what you mean by research teams, but generally every researcher should have access to one of these things, either the faculty leading the research team or the research, whoever kind of got the funding for that research team themselves. Who is funding it? This is actual base budget funding through the provost and the CIO's office. So it's not being covered by, like, say, Michigan Medicine if you're in Michigan Medicine, but if you're in kinesiology, miss out. No, this is available to everybody and it's funded centrally. So if a faculty member's primary appointment moves from kinesiology to medicine, doesn't matter. It moves with them and it goes with them. We didn't cover any of it here, but this kind of touches on another thing that's been come up is what happens when a faculty member leaves, the qualifying faculty member, and their students they were supporting with that maybe reside around the university for another 1 to 2 years to finish their PhD. Under that condition, we will leave the RCP open while the students are finishing up. We would just ask somebody from the department to be added as a delegated administrator so that when a renewal process goes out, they can say, hey, these students are gone, we can shut this down now, and kind of, let us know when the work that was started is now complete. So are storage options suitable for sharing export control data? Yes, we have. All of our services currently have ITAR, EAR controls in place. You can look on the sensitive data guide and you can find all of the brand names for these services. The high-speed storage is called Turbo. The high performance computing storage is called Great Lakes, and you'll see that the ITAR, EAR stuff is in there. Now, that is necessary but not sufficient. Obviously, all the researchers and everything need to understand the export control program of the university and their responsibility in terms of like where and how they're accessing and who they're delegating data to. Dropbox is okay for PHI, but if you go and share it with somebody, like, you've broken the security model. So you have to understand your responsibility in the shared responsibility model for controlling access to data, depending on what it is. But yes, our systems go, in terms of sensitive data, we have FERPA, all that stuff. The high performance computing and the bulk storage here go up through HIPAA. But then for CUI, controlled unclassified information, NIST 800-171, which looks a lot like FISMA, is only available in the secure enclave environment, but that's available too and is currently free because it's supported by a donation from an alumni. But yeah, any of these IT needs that come up, cloud, on-prem, we run these services, but we tend to be very knowledgeable. We have a relationship with the National Science Foundation and Department of Energy, as well as all the major cloud providers, and can basically find what is the appropriate solution, help devise budgets for proposals and things like that. No remaining questions. So anything else? You have our contact information, arc-support@umich.edu. You can always find me at brockp, BROCKP @umich.edu. I've been doing this for coming up almost on 20 years now. So if we don't know how to do it, we tend to know the people to ask. So when you've got a research project going on, trying to figure out data storage, computation, compliance, if you don't know directly who to ask, contact us and we tend to know who to direct you to. Okay, so if there's no other questions, I believe I'm supposed to hand it off to Jennifer for our next our next item.
Hello, thank you, Brock. Hi, everyone. As Kathy had included in her introduction, I work at the Ross School of Business and oversee the school-sponsored research portfolio. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a cisgender female with shoulder length, now not in the picture, darker blonde hair with glasses and a teal shirt. I'm joining from my office at the business school. So a bit more about me before I give you an overview of the RAC Metrics Subcommittee. Part of the diversity, equity, and inclusion work that I'm involved with includes bringing more of the human into the workplace. So here we go. As a hobby, I'm a metalsmith that works mainly with sterling silver to create unique jewelry pieces. I really enjoy setting stones, as you can see by some of the examples I've shown, and even created my wife's wedding rings, though I did not add a picture of those. With the colder temperature in the air these days, I've been thinking about the upcoming holiday season and wanted to showcase a bit of my family's Michigan spirit with a pic of our favorite matching pajamas. Now we'll get back to the actual subcommittee. So as the current chair of the RAC Metrics Subcommittee, I have the fun task of sharing the work of the subcommittee, which was really led by my predecessor, Chris Allen. So here we have the vision of the subcommittee, which aspires to assist those interested in research administration data by enabling them to acquire the information desired to meet their strategic and operational data needs. This visualization showcases the subcommittee's main goals of communication, education, and advocating for the research administration community. Next slide, please. Thank you. As current chair of the RAC Metrics, next slide is the membership of the subcommittee has remained pretty solid for the last couple of years, which works well, but it brings together many different perspectives from around the university. So in order to help highlight the accomplishments of the RAC Metrics Subcommittee, a RAP will be coming out soon to provide more details about what I'm going to present here. The Research Administration Catalog of Curated Reports is now available in the mReports report library. So the report library includes direct links to updated and new reports in both Business Objects and Tableau. So Tableau houses a series of visualizations for the research administration community. Also available in the report catalog is the current and pending support or other support report, say that a lot of times fast, that summarizes data from eResearch as well as current appointment data. But please keep in mind, as noted on this slide, that additional access may be required to run all of the queries. So up next, we have Constance Colthorpe and Becky O'Brien, who will be talking to us about SLAC, and I get to introduce them to you. So Constance Colthorpe is a graduate of the University of Michigan School of Information. So for 25 years, she's worked to connect people to useful digital information and resources. She loves doing this particular work in service of the research administration community. Constance refuels by spending time with her spouse, 2 teenagers, 2 cats, Sherlock and Watson, and her dog Violet, who is prison raised through Leader Dogs for the Blind and has career changed to be a curious sniffer. Becky O'Brien is the Director of Research Administration at the School of Information. She has been at the University of Michigan for 20 years, 16 of those at the School of Information. And please join us after this to give all of our accolades to both Becky, or to Becky, as well as all the rest of our awardees in research administration. Hand it over now.
Thank you, Jennifer. I think, is
Thanks,
Constance,
Jennifer.
are you open? Okay, there you are.
Yeah,
Sorry,
can you
go
hear
ahead.
me?
Yes.
That's okay. Hey, thanks, Jennifer. It's great to be here. I'm Constance Colthorpe. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And as mentioned, I serve as communications manager for both ORSP and sponsored programs.
And I'm Becky O'Brien. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I'm the Director of Research Administration at the School of Information.
Okay. So both Becky and I are here today on behalf of the Research Administration Advisory Council, or RAC, Communications Subcommittee. And we're here today to talk to you about our transition of our informal sharing space called the RA Forum from Facebook Workplace to its new home on Slack. And then we'd like to first acknowledge our communication subcommittee members. Kathy Leibowitz shared this slide earlier because one of our tasks is to support RAN. Our subcommittee colleagues come from various schools and colleges and central offices, so we work together well. Okay, so the purpose of the RAC Communications Subcommittee is to advise on the development and maintenance of various communication outlets for the research community at University of Michigan. So these communication outlets or tools include digital resources such as the ORSP website, our RAP or rapid newsletters, and this in-person or virtual event of RAN. And last year, we were so excited to add something to that communication tool set, and it was this informal sharing space so that RAs could communicate with each other directly and share ideas and resources. Becky presented it at RAN last February. So let's just review our journey to date. So last year, just in time for Research Administrators Day on September 25th, 2020, we launched the RA Forum on Facebook Workplace. And as I mentioned, Becky demoed it at the February RAN meeting. We grew the space to 228 members. And then suddenly, late in August of 2021, just a little bit ago, the university announced that Facebook would cease using Workplace or offering Facebook Workplace to higher education institutions at no cost. So this was quite a surprise to the university and to all of us who had space in Facebook Workplace, and we all had to pivot quickly. So before we move on, we have a poll question for you about Facebook Workplace. So if you're ready, in the past year, did you participate with any of the University of Michigan Facebook Workplace spaces? Yes or no? We'd love to hear from you. So in the past year, Facebook Workplace at U of M, did you participate with any of those? Okay, and then Chris, how does this work? Does this just, yeah, there it goes. Oh, okay, interesting, really. So about half, but not fully half. So 48% yes, 52% no. Just as a side note, it was nice to have this virtual sharing space during the pandemic because, you know, it was a way to form connections or stay connected with people, whether it was sharing a really good resource or a pet picture. So while many of us were sad to see it go, we're fortunate that the university made quick arrangements to adopt Slack as a replacement for social sharing. So likewise, the RAC Communications Subcommittee responded quickly, and we worked to transition our RA Forum to the Slack platform. And today we'd like to introduce it to you. And our hope is that we'll have a lot more than 50% of usage. So I'll turn it over to Becky, who can provide more information on what Slack is and conduct a demo of how to use it here at U of M. Thank you.
There we go. Okay, so what is the RA Forum on Slack? The principles and purpose are still the same as the original forum. It's an online informal space for discussion and sharing by people with common interests, like a listserv, internet forum, or message board, but with a nicer interface that's easier to use. It's still about expanding our RA networks, a place to ask questions or share things that aren't policy or official procedure, but more about experience, best practices, templates, and a place to collaborate peer-to-peer, like we're huddling around a coffee station or water cooler, sharing knowledge across our 19 schools and colleges and 3 campuses. Several other Facebook Workplace groups have made that move from Facebook Workplace to Slack under the U of M umbrella. For example, there's Working at U of M that was on the Facebook Workplace is now UMich Works. You can find mHealthy exercise classes here still. You can find Buy-Sell Trade, a Diversity, Equity, Inclusion channel. And how about we take another quick poll. This time, the question is, have you participated in Slack, either here at U of M or in another capacity? So we'll give a little bit of time for people to answer that. Great. Okay, so there are some participation. That's great. Let's move a little bit. So for those that are not familiar with Slack, you might be wondering when we're using some of the terminology like workplace and channel, what we mean by that. So here's a quick primer. So you have the U of M umbrella in Slack at that top level, which is one sign-in for everything under the U of M umbrella, and it's accessible to anyone at U of M. Then there's the next level, which are the workspaces. So these are larger groups of interests, such as UMich Work or the RA Forum, which we're talking about today. And then there's channels underneath that, and those are more like conversation chains or topics housed within the workspace. And just a quick note, all of the channels start with the hashtag, so that's why you see that there. We're going to do a quick demo so that you guys can get a chance to see what this looks like. So I'm just going to pull this up here. And so this is going to show my instance, my account of Slack under the RA Forum. And it's just going to take a minute. Here we go. And you can see RA Forum here. You can switch between other ones, other workspaces. But you can see this here. There's the general channel, there's random. Random is a little more like the fun whatever, and general is a little more informative. So you can see here that Constance asked a question here about business objects reports. And so what we're going to do is we're going to reply to her. And so if you wanted to start your own new message, you can start it down here. To reply, I just hover over message, and I can see these different items, these different activities I can do here. This little word cloud is to reply to her. So I'm going to reply, and it'll pop up over here. Oh, great. Oh, someone already answered. That's wonderful. And I am going to put in some information here. Bear with me 1 second. I'm going to put in some information here. So I'm saying, yeah, there's the mReports library where you can search some of that. There's particularly something called current and pending report. And I am going to tag Jennifer. Oh, great. She's right there. I'm going to tag Jennifer, and she'll get a direct ping to take a look at this, and we'll send her a message. So it's pretty easy to use. I think, it's great for asynchronous interactions. And just one quick note while we're going through here, if you hit enter or return when you're typing something, oh yay, Jennifer, thank you so much for responding. So if you hit enter or return while you're typing, it'll actually post what you've written so far. So if you're actually looking to insert a line break instead of actually posting, you're going to want to click shift and then enter or return in order to post that. Okay, great. So I'm going to go back here, and we will, oops, there we go. So we've got a few more slides on here that I'm going to go by pretty quickly because they're really just demonstrating what I just showed you, but I thought it would be, or we thought it would be great to have some examples for folks who might look at this later. So these are some post examples. Here's how to do a new post and some information on posting a reply. And let's talk a little bit about who is on the RA Forum on Slack. So if you are on the RA Forum on Facebook Workplace, we were able to move you to the RA Forum on Slack. So you are already part of the community there. It's intended for the U of M RA community broadly. Anyone interested at U of M interested in our research administration can join. And a reminder that it's meant for informal sharing. So that means the staff of ORSP and sponsored programs, they've been asked by the leadership not to answer questions on the forum in order to avoid confusion about official communication. But rest assured, you can still reach out to them via their usual channels. You can visit their websites for more information on policies and procedures. Okay, and then how do you access the RA Forum on Slack? So if you already have a Slack account under the U of M umbrella, you can get to it 3 different ways. You can go to the ORSP website, and there's a link there or there's more information, or sorry, we have a link on this slide, and you can go there for more information and for a gateway to the forum. You can go directly to the workspace via the link we have on this slide here, or you can go to the U of M umbrella or landing page web page, which is slack.umich.edu, which might be a little easier to remember. And then you search for RA Forum. And now, if you don't have a Slack account yet, under the U of M umbrella, you can go to this ITS website to get more information, or you can go directly to slack.umich.edu, sign in with your UMich credentials, and then agree to the terms of service. And also, if you do have a Slack account, it's just not under the U of M umbrella, you can create a U of M Slack account, and then you can easily toggle between the two. But you do need to have U of M affiliation to have a U of M Slack account. And so we went through that kind of quickly, but we just wanted to give you guys a little bit of an orientation to the new RA Forum on Slack. Thank you for your time. We need you in our new space to make it real. And again, the RA Forum can be found on Slack. You can go to slack.umich.edu, and we look forward to you joining us. If you have any questions, we do have an email here on the slide. Please reach out to us. Okay, great. I saw a couple of questions pop up. I don't know if it was. Okay, there was a quick question. What was created U of M Slack? You know what, I might answer this afterwards. The links aren't working. Okay, we will work on those links. Oh, the RA Forum should appear. Okay, we will work on some of this.
Yeah, I think.
Yes, we will follow up with folks who are having some trouble getting access. We did test this out, so it should be working, but maybe there's something going on. So we will definitely figure out what's happening and get back with you folks.
If it helps, it's not part of UMichWorks. It's not part of Maize and Blue. So just go to slack.umich.edu and search. But we'll send out some instructions, and thanks again. This is helpful. We'll reach out to you folks separately. Maybe you can help us create some resources. Take care,
great.
Everybody.
Thanks, Constance. And we're going to turn this over to the MC, Melissa. Thank you.
Oh, let me get my video started here. Oh, Chris, you got it? Okay, great. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Melissa Carby. I am the chair of the RAC Process Subcommittee, and I also work for the Office of the Vice President for Research as their Associate Director for Research Administration. So as Kathy said, Cradle to Grave Research Administration is what we do for the units that report up through UMOR. Next slide, please. A little bit about myself. Here's a quote from one of my favorite music artists. Every tomorrow is a vision of hope. Kind of doesn't make sense, but it also kind of does. I have 20 years of experience at the University of Michigan. I started my career just before September 11th in 2001 as a patient care associate. That was a failed job. I lost my position in my probationary period. And that's why I believe that that quote applies, because every tomorrow is a vision of hope. And then I was able to come back to the University of Michigan into research administration, and that's where I've made my career. Also, a little bit about myself. Sprechen Sie Deutsch, anyone? I don't, but my husband does, because he's a local German teacher. Next slide, please. The RAC Process Subcommittee is, the name sometimes is a little misleading, but we look to the business process side and sometimes the technical side of how work is done in the RA area here at the university. So we look to identify and promote changes to the research administration processes, hopefully to benefit the community. And this is all throughout the life cycle, pre, post, and also compliance. Next slide, please. Here is the list of our members for RAC Process. You can see that we have a good mixture of central office and campus unit representation. Next slide. A few accomplishments. This is by no means an all-inclusive list of what the RAC Process group has worked on throughout the years. This is just a small smattering of them. So if you've seen on the ORSP website, there are roles and responsibility documents. We also refer to them as RACI documents. There are 7 phases of these documents. We have up to phase 6 posted on the ORSP website. Phase 7 will be worked on and posted hopefully by the end of the calendar year or the very beginning of next calendar year. We have worked through subcommittee work and submitted multiple requests for enhancements to ITS for M-reports. Things like you can add the sense. You can have sense now in M-reports via a toggle, or you can download the reports in M-reports with no hyperlinks, and also the consolidated summary view of projects. The electronic concurrence receipt workflow was a derivative of the RAC process subcommittee in conjunction with the Office of Contract Administration. We also worked to add a unit review checkbox in e-reconciliation. And the biggest project that we've been working on most recently, which I know many of you are probably here to hear about, is the award change request, or what I call the PACAR electronification. So this is a group that is working to program into e-research proposal management specifically, award change requests that will replace the old post-award change request form. And so that is a nice segue into our next presentation. And I have the pleasure to introduce to you 3 of the RAC process committee members, Karen Almadine, Beth Brandt, and Carolyn Pappas, who will be presenting on the changes that are coming in November with the award change request. And I'll just give you brief intros to each individual. So Karen Almadine is the managing project representative on the government team in the Office of Research and Sponsored Projects. She's worked for the University of Michigan for 9 years, starting on the Dearborn campus, with the last 6 being in ORSP. Beth Brandt is the Associate Director of Post-Award Research Administration at Michigan Medicine in their Office of Research. She's been with the university for 34 years and I know this personally, has a great interest in process improvement initiatives designed to maximize efficiencies and enhance the value of research administration. And finally, Carolyn Pappas. Carolyn is a business systems supervisor in IT, so Information and Technology Services, and has been with the e-research proposal management team for just over 10 years. Prior to ITS, Carolyn worked as a research administrator in the Institute for Social Research. So Beth, Karen, and Carolyn, take it away. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Melissa, and welcome to everybody that's attending. I'm Beth Brandt with Michigan Medicine Office of Research, and as Melissa mentioned, one of my areas of interest is initiatives related to research administration process improvements. I am a member on the RAC process subcommittee. I'm here today with my co-presenters to provide an update on an upcoming ERPM system enhancement designed to streamline and automate post-award change request, or PACAR, processing that is scheduled to go live next month on Monday, November 15th. Next. For those of you that may be unfamiliar, post-award change request is a mechanism for project teams to submit a change request to an active funded award, and it may be required throughout the life cycle of the award. The current process for submitting post-award change requests involves a combination of paper and electronic processing, consisting of project team determination of the required signatures and documentation, using help and a resource guide, manually collecting the required signatures on a PDF form, and then electronically submitting the request, signed forms, and support documents in ERPM via the award record to ORSP. And we know from feedback received from units in ORSP that the current process is cumbersome, inefficient, and oftentimes results in back and forth and rework between the units and ORSP. In response to inefficiency and rework concerns, streamlining and fully automating award change requests was prioritized as a project. And a volunteer team was put together to provide recommendations for system design and development of a fully electronic workflow. The goals were to allow effective information collection on the front end, for example, ensuring correct documentation and signatures were obtained, as well as efficient processing with no duplication of paper and system entry required. Next. To meet these goals, the project was approached in 2 phases. In the initial review and recommendation phase, committee members reviewed the current change request process and completed a review of each change request type, as well as the documentation requirements of each. We identified the data elements and input fields needed for each change request type and mapped the electronic approval requirements and prioritize system functionality. During that time, the group also captured any policy and procedure issues and documented any system design requests that came up during functionality discussions. In the design and automation phase, the team continued the work by revising and updating the change types to meet current needs, working extensively with ITS to finalize and test the new ACR SmartForm pages that would allow full automation, addressing policy and procedure issues, and conducting focus group feedback sessions with unit and ORSP representatives to validate system design and functionality. Next. These activities took place over a 2-year period of time, with the initial kickoff meeting being held in September of 2019. We had an incredible team of colleagues collaborating to get us where we are here today, and I want to take the time to acknowledge and thank the team members, and especially my co-chair, Karen. We were fortunate to have input and guidance of cross-campus representation from the schools and colleges, ORSP, and ITS. I'm not going to read through the team member names, but I do want to call attention to the last member listed on the slide and point out that in addition to the team members listed, there were many folks in the research administration community that helped by providing feedback, as well as system testing. And this thank you extends to all of you as well. With that bit of background and overview, I'm going to hand over the virtual baton to Karen for a preview of some of the changes taking effect on November 15th.
Thank you, Beth, and hi, everyone. I'll be sharing some information about what's changing with the automation of the ACR. The existing PACR form, the PDF, will be retired, and the term PACR is going to be replaced with Award Change Request, ACR. We'll be automating the current form with ERPM functionality for all the change types and the required documentation and approvals. PIs will be approving ACRs electronically in ERPM now, instead of signing the paper form. And new investigators that are added to an award will electronically sign an ERPM. So this process includes answering the 4 international engagement questions on the second page of the current PACR form. And then reviewers will approve the requests in ERPM also. We've also updated some current ACR change types, so we wanted to review those. First, there's a new option that's been added for indirect cost waivers or class code changes. And this requires dean or director level approval. We expect that it will be used infrequently, but a separate category was needed so that we could obtain the correct approvals in the system. We've also expanded the retroactive pre-award costs option and removed the 90-day limit. And it can also be used for all sponsors now, not just federal sponsors. We've separated the U of M PI key person change and the non-U of M PI key person change options. And for U of M personnel changes, the project team will be actually selecting the person's unique name and their appointing department in ERPM. It was necessary to separate these 2 options because the non-U of M investigator changes have to be handled differently in the system. We also changed the current selection for transfer to new institution, and now we're calling it early termination with transfer to new entity. This name change was made to eliminate some confusion. So the early termination option is still available. And in both cases, the award is actually early terminating at U of M, but the difference is whether the project will continue on at another entity or not. So that's the determining factor for which option we pick. We've also changed the PACR other option to be called change request not specified above. And this option should be used to process a change that requires PI and department approval and is not one of the options in the list of 20 other change types. For example, IPA modifications or changes in payment terms. This was a design team recommendation to have sponsor amendments that are not for a specific ACR type routed as this change request not specified above. And this was done to provide clear guidance to project teams who may not understand when additional approvals are or are not needed. And then we've streamlined the other action selection. This can be used to request ORSP action that does not require PI and department approval, such as signing and submitting documents to a sponsor, updating the award record with a PRO, FUME, or IBCA number, or releasing an award hold due to its completion. You'll also notice some other changes. The award number will now be part of the ACR ID so that it's easier to identify what award the request is connected to. And this is consistent with the numbering that's used on mods. On the initial screen, where the project team will select the change type, there will also be a description for each option included. And hopefully this will eliminate some confusion and assist with selecting the correct change type. In addition, there will be customized help text on the smartphone page for each of the change types. ACRs will electronically route to the individuals that are authorized to approve on behalf of the unit or the school college. And similar to on the path, there will be a table available to view the required approvals and see which are pending and which have already been completed. So it should make it easier to see where the ACR is in the approval process. Each change type will have specific fields to enter the required documentation. For example, for a no-cost extension, there will be a required field to enter the new project end date. And we're hoping this will eliminate missing information and save time by reducing the frequency of ACRs being returned for changes. There will also be enhanced functionality for tracking multiple requests on one ACR record. The ACR main workspace will have a list of each change requested along with the status of each request. So that's a brief summary of the changes. And now Carolyn Peppis is going to review the ERPM updates and system functionality in more detail.
Great, thanks Karen and Beth. Welcome everyone. I am going to walk through some screenshots of what it's going to look like in the system come November 15th. So on this first slide here, I'm on an active award. The button's in the same place as it is today. It has a slightly different label on it. It's now going to be called Request Action. The same group of people who create it today can also create it come November 15th. But we've expanded that group a little bit. So in addition to the administrative personnel who are listed on the award, which includes both of your named post-award contacts, anyone who is also or has the role of reviewer or an approver in ERPM can also create an award change request. And this is really to allow people, if you're a sub on an award, you can go in and create one. However, once the ACR is created, then the number of people who can actually edit the created ACR narrows down to the person who created it, the post-award contacts listed on that award, and or the administrative home chain of approvers. And they're really in a lot of these activities, and they can do a lot in the system as a kind of as a backup group in case something gets stuck. So similar to today, you click the button to create a request. You get a new page. the list of the award change requests are listed, all 23 of them. You select one or more as needed. What's going to be different is once you select those change requests, you are going to get some new pages to fill out in the system. And I'm going to show you in the next slide what one of them looks like. In this particular one, I chose rebudgeting requiring sponsor approval. And all of these are kind of set up in a similar way. There's a blue box for help at the top. All the help is hopefully on screen. And if you have questions about if you should use it or if this is appropriate, there are examples, there are different use cases, and hopefully you have the information you need. Below that are the questions that you have to fill out that will allow your reviewers and your PI and ORSP to review and evaluate the request. Most of these are set up in a way with a yes/no questions. If you say yes, new questions open up, you add the necessary information. They're also set up so you have a choice of either uploading a document or by checking that little red box to say it's uploaded, or you can enter in text in a text box. And that is pretty much true on all 23 pages, just the specific questions are different. Next, please. So once I filled out an award change request, similar to filling out a PAF, you're going to run the route for approval activity. And there are two different activities depending on your role in the system. If you are not one of the named post-award contacts, you're going to have an activity, but you created the award change request. You're going to have an activity called route to post-award contacts. And once you run that activity, it's going to show up in the inbox of one of the post-award contacts, either the primary or the primary always, and the additional if there is someone in that role. However, if you're one of the named post-award contacts on the award, then you have the activity called route for approval, similar to today, and it will route to your PI for review and approval. So before I go and show you what that looks like for the PI, I'm going to just walk you through the redesigned award workspace, or sorry, award change request workspace. In the upper right-hand corner, the new ID will display the award number and then the ACR ID. Below it is a link going back to the parent award in case you need to use that. Going over to the left-hand side, there's a status map similar to what you see on award and PAF. It will show you where the particular record is in its workflow. Underneath that, we have a main tab, which gives you some of the main information on the post-award change type, as well as award information. There's also a new tab that is called routing and approval details. And this is similar to what you see on the PAF when it's in unit review. We can go to the next slide. I have a screenshot of it. It gives you information on the department and who is in the pending approval set, who's already approved. So if you're someone who needs to keep track of this, this is a good place to go. So going back to routing the ACR, once I route the ACR, it is going to go to the PI, or if it's a multi-PI project and it requires all PIs to sign, they're going to get an email, and here's an example of it. It tells you there's action required, what the change type is being requested, and what you need to do to go into the system and approve it. Next slide, please. Once the PI logs into ERPM, there's an activity called Approve ACR. That is one of two options. They can either approve the activity by opening it up and entering any comments and clicking OK. They could also, if they need something changed, they have the ability to request changes. So as what Karen and Beth mentioned, this replaces the signature on the PDF form. They're now going to do this in the system. If we can go to the next slide, this is also true. Let's say you do an award change type that is adding a new U of M key person onto the award change request and the award. The new investigator who's being added is also going to have to run the sign ACR activity. They too will get an email telling them they need to go in and run the activity in ERPM. It's very similar to what's on the PAF and the award. They have to have a completed annual M-Informed disclosure prior to running this activity. And then they answer the same questions about the COI and the international engagement questions. I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of the ACR workflow. We've already kind of talked about the project team, the different states that the ACR could be in. We're going to talk a little bit more about unit review in a second. There is a new state called compliance review, and some records, if the new investigator getting added has answered yes to one of the 4 international engagement questions, this record may go into compliance review. So that's just something to be aware of. And then similar to what you have today, there's an ORSP review state, an initial and a second one if it comes back. And then also not pictured here, but you have a sponsor review. And that's if ORSP needs to send it to the sponsor for approval or negotiation. So if you're a PI or project team person, you're also going to see a new tab, and it's called ACRs. It is going to be a shared inbox. The PI, post-award contacts, and the person who created the ACR will have records that show up in this. It's really modeled after the PAF inbox with similar listers. So you have award change requests that you have to attend to, ones that aren't approved by the PI, ones that are not yet signed by an investigator, and then if you need to keep track of them, all other ACRs that are in progress. Similarly, the reviewers, if you have a reviewer role, you're going to have a new tab called ACRs. It is, again, going to work similar to the PAF. There are going to be some ACRs that are ready for review and approval, ones that have come back for changes, anything that you've already approved, and anything that's upcoming. So this could really allow you to keep track of items that are either with you or have already passed you or are upcoming. One special thing to alert you to, if you're someone who manages a department, we have a couple of changes on here. The first thing is to let you know that there's a new email group. It's called the Award Change Requests Notifications. And this is only going to be used to alert units when it's ready, when an award change request is ready for unit approval. We are initially going to populate it with the set of award notifications, the set right above it. And you can then go in and modify it once after the 15th of November, once it's in the system. The other thing to alert you to, it's possible that the current set of unit approvers, which is currently called reviewers who can sign, that's the label in the system right now, but we are changing it to unit approver set. It is possible that the people you have in there today are primarily your PAF approvers, and you may want to take a look at that list and decide if you need to modify it and add anyone new who might be now approving for ACR notifications, ACRs in the system. So that is important to know. Lastly, some kind of overview items. Again, as Beth mentioned, the release is going to go in on the weekend of the 13th and the 14th. We are going to use an existing maintenance window on Saturday night to put it in. So the system will be unavailable, but it's normally unavailable at this time. And it will be available again on Sunday morning. The other thing that is important are you currently have ACRs that are in the kind of the hybrid format that are in the system. Anything that you have created using the PDF forms And if you have routed it before the close of business on Friday, November 12th, it's going to follow the old workflow, and it will remain in the system until it's lived its cycle. If you have created something and it's in the state of draft and it hasn't been routed, we are going to go in and we are going to cancel it. So anything you create new on the 15th in the state of draft has to use the new workflow. Similarly, if you have a really old ACR and it's in the state of changes requested for more than 6 months, it's going to be canceled. So those are just some things that you need to know. I believe we already sent it in a rapid. Lastly, I'm using this as a page that you can come back to. Come November 15th, we're going to have all this information updated. I also want to let you know that we are planning a webinar next Wednesday, November 3rd from 1 to 2. We're going to be doing some demos of the different award change requests. Chris, I believe the registration webinar link is open.
Correct, yep.
Okay. We are planning on setting out a rapid, so be on the lookout if you're someone that would be interested in this webinar. That ends my presentation on the award change request. And now I just want to tell you one other update that is going on in ERPM, but it's for those of you who do NIH applications. NIH is releasing a Forms G for submission deadlines on or after January 25th. Want to let you know that they're making changes to various things on the form. It's mostly for the change to the UEI number. And the forms for NE research will not be available until early to mid-January. We're not getting these from our vendor until the end of December. We will communicate with a rapid on how to proceed if you need to create a path with the old forms, FOA Forms F. And that ends my ITS update and ACR presentation. And Debbie Talley, I believe you are next with sponsored programs.
Great, thanks,
Thank
Carolyn.
you.
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to provide you some updates. This first update is just to let you know what happened with our uniform guidance audit. The FY20 audit was completed. We were given some extra time because of the pandemic, and so it was submitted before June 30th, which was the deadline. In that audit, which I had mentioned, I think at the last RAN meeting, there was a finding, and it was specific to equipment once again. Again, this was related to assets that were still listed on the inventory, and they had been previously disposed of. So that is a finding that we will again have to make a comment on this year. So more to come on that. We're just in the beginning of the FY21 audit. And for the FY21 audit, the focus is really on financial aid. This is our off year for research and development, but they will be dealing with that open finding from last year and how we manage that. So that kind of leads me to the next item, which is related to the, I'm sorry, can you go back a slide? This is related to the baseline equipment inventory update. So as I mentioned, maybe at several of the RAN meetings, the university embarked on a baseline equipment inventory, and they were going to do that, and then the pandemic happened, and so it was delayed, but it has been completed. And as a result of that baseline equipment inventory, which was really hiring an external company to come in and locate all the assets of the university, there are assets that we'll need to address related to sponsored projects. So either ourselves in sponsored programs or the people in property control will be reaching out to some of you related to some of those assets in question. Next slide. So I'm happy to and excited to report that we have a new process for the sub-PG requests. So as I mentioned back in May, that we were looking to launch a sub-PG form that was really an electronic request form. So I know you've been accustomed to downloading a PDF version of this form and then emailing it into get your short code and your sub-PGs. Now this is actually moving to a smart form, and we'll be sending information out about this in a rapid. The smart form will have some improvements to the previous process. So obviously it'll save time preparing those requests. You'll be able to track the progress in workflow. And there's new and optional fields, which I'll share in just a minute, and then the accompanying instructions, which will help you with preparing that form. And if we can go to the next slide, I can show you, this is the current form. It should look really obvious to all of you that use it. The next slide is what the new form will look like. And the highlighted items are the ones that are new, that are optional. So please watch for that rapid that will come out soon, and you'll be able to start using a new form. Next slide, please. The next thing that I wanted to share, this is our busy time of the year once again. We have about 2,400 reports due by December 31st. And as always, we are grateful for all of your help, and we continue to need your help. So we're looking for all of you to review and return those reports as soon as possible. And we know that that's a challenge for everyone. We also wanted to share that there's a way for you to keep track of your reports that are coming due. And that is in a business objects query, which is here. If you go to the user shared sponsored programs, upcoming FSRs by department ID, that will provide you with all the reports that are coming due by a certain due date. As of right now, we have 1,200 reports to complete. And the other part of that I wanted to share was that we also have a number of closeouts to complete. Now, as you all know, that's not one of our priorities during this time of the year, but if there are any of those old projects that have charges that are appropriate to a continuation project that we may be reporting on, please make sure that those charges get moved as appropriate. Next slide, please. The last thing that I really wanted to share was that Sponsored Programs has staff working in 3 different modes. So starting October 4th, the finance area came back to or started their future of work. And for Sponsored Programs, the majority of our staff are going to continue to work remotely. We do have some staff who prefer to work on site, and they are, for the most part, here every day. And then in addition to that, we do have some people who are working on site a couple days a week and off remotely the other days. What I wanted to share was that we've been successful with that mode of remote working as well as the hybrid throughout the pandemic. And I'm really proud of our staff for being able to continue to work that way, continuing to serve our customers and be able to work in a remote setting if that's what they would like to continue to do. So we're going to continue to pilot this along with finance and BNF, and hopefully we will be able to continue this route into the future. And if there's any questions or concerns related to that, please let me know. But as far as I know at this point, based on our metrics, we've been really successful with operating this way. So with that, I think that is it, unless there's any questions for me. Let me just double check. I don't think so. So I am now going to turn it over to Andrea Anderson. Andrea?
Thanks, Debbie. Hi, everyone. I'm just going to give you a quick ORSP update. Looks like we are running a slight bit over, so I'll try and be quick and catch us up on time. If you want to move to the next slide, please. So a few agency updates. One really big one that we are dealing with right now, as many of you have probably heard, the federal government is issuing vaccine mandates related to federal contracts and federal cooperative agreements. So we are starting to see amendments come through from the federal government, including this new FAR clause. The university is currently working diligently on making sure that we can certify compliance with that FAR clause. While the university is working on putting those guide rails in place, we are holding any amendments that come in until we are given the go-ahead to certify. So we do want to make sure the university is fully compliant before we sign off on those. So if you see an amendment has come through for your award and it has included this FAR clause, we are holding it until we have the go-ahead to accept it. So we're hoping to be able to do that very soon. We also have the new guidance on NRSA awards coming out. Childcare costs will now be allowable, and U of M is working on implementing processes for authorizing those expenses on those awards. So more to come on that. As Carolyn mentioned earlier, the Forms G will be coming up January 25th. So please be aware of that change. We are working on the new login.gov, which is a single sign-on that grants.gov is going to be offering. So U of M is going to be utilizing the federated login, which is a technical way of saying basically using your U of M login and password, the one that you use to sign in every day for work. So more information on how to actually access systems with that login information will be coming out in a rapid in the near future. As some of you probably have noticed, NSF released their updated PAPG, and that has become effective as of October 4th. So please be aware there were a few changes in that update. NSF has multiple webinars available that you can go out and look at on their website detailing what has been changed. But a few highlights, they've added a couple of new proposal types, one for planning and one which is a supplemental award type or proposal type for career life balance. They also had some updates to their BioSketch and current and pending support formats, so be aware of that. And they have automated the removal of blank pages, but please note that if you utilize that feature, they will not correct the numbering, so you'll probably have skipped pages if they do remove any blank pages. There are some changes coming up January 25th on other support. There was a very detailed presentation by Craig Reynolds in the last RAN. So if you want to get more into the weeds on that, please go back and look at the video from the last RAN presentation. But this will apply at JIT and at RPPR, so just in time and your progress reporting time. There are some changes to outside activities and how those have to be reported. So they are scooping in consulting and visiting professorships. Those need to be reported in your other support if a senior key person is conducting research as part of that outside activity. There will also be new templates available, and there will be more detailed communication coming out on that also in a rapid in the next week or so. In addition, NIH is going to be requiring that we provide supporting documentation for any foreign support that the investigator is receiving. So we will be collecting those and submitting those to NIH under this new requirement starting January 25th. We do have to provide a translated copy if the contract itself was not in English, and machine translations are acceptable. So if you use Google Translate, that will be accepted by the federal government. Here at home in ORSP, a few updates. So we've been keeping an eye on those at-risk proposal numbers, and we were doing really good in June and July, but we have started to see those numbers slip back up. So we wanted to make you aware we're seeing an uptick. As many of you may know, our government team right now is still quite short-staffed. We had some really joyous news that we've got a few people out on parental leave, but that does leave the team with less capacity to address these things. So please know that your at-risk proposals are even more at risk right now, and the higher that number goes, more likely it is that we're going to be turning some away without even submitting. So please try and get things in ahead of that at-risk window. One other thing to keep in mind with that is that you are required to submit proposals through our office before sending them into the sponsor. So please make sure we aren't receiving them after they've been submitted to the sponsor. As the institutional authorized official, our office has to sign off on those. We do have deliverables rolling out soon for federal awards. So that's the final technical and final hardware and software deliverable that is being entered in ERPM now for awards ending on or after January 1st. The system is going to start automating reminders out to both the faculty member, the PI, and to the research administrator associated with that award. So more communication will be coming out on that, and training as well on how to close out those deliverables once they've been submitted to the sponsor, but we want you to be aware that that is coming soon. And just a quick reminder on communicating with ORSP while we are still in this hybrid environment, please feel free to reach out by phone, but if we are not in the office on the day that you call, you can leave us a voicemail that is automatically translated into an email and sent to the person that you are contacting. We are working on a soft phone solution, but we're waiting for the university to come out with a vendor that we can utilize for that. So until then, we're continuing to work via email, voicemail, or phone when we are in the office. So thank you. And I'm going to turn it back over to Kathy.
Thanks, Andrea. I think we are ready for the next slide, Chris. We're a little bit behind time, and I apologize. I'm going to make this as quickly as possible. We do have a quick anonymous poll. We want to know how excited you are about the new award change request process, about how we did today, and to gauge your interest in the possibility of virtual networking opportunities in the future. So please select one response for each question, and we'll give you a little time to respond. And I think in the meantime, we do have some professional development information. It was scrolling at the beginning of the meeting. I do want to make a special note of the NCURA Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion webinar series. The next event is on allyship on November 9th. Look for more information on an upcoming RAP or RAPID and on the ORSP website or on the NCURA website. So we have a lot of enthusiasm for the ACR, and most people have found this helpful and relevant, and we'd like to hear from you if you didn't, so please let us know. And it looks like we've got enough interest to consider some virtual networking. So thank you for attending, RAN. I want to extend our gratitude and appreciation to our MCs and presenters, to the communications subcommittee for bringing it all together, and most of all to you for being with us today. Keep in touch on the forum. We will work out the technical difficulties and get back to you some form of communication, because that's what we're about. If you have ideas, suggestions, or other feedback, please let us know. Send us an email at ran-plans@umich.edu. The first 2022 RAND meeting will be in February. The format and the dates are to be determined. Take care, stay well, and now over to the OVPR for the Staff Recognition Awards. Thank you.